live, probably a moment too early, but just getting things set up here and letting everybody join in. No unicorn headphones, yeah. Alright, sorry guys. I'm trying to position this so I can actually read the chat and make sure that the stream is working at the same time. It's got a monitor, like, okay, one monitor's there, the other monitor's like, you can't see it, but it's like, I'm looking at it right now. So there's like a gap in between the displays for the camera. It's not an ideal situation. We'll be getting going here shortly, though. Audio is good. It's good to hear. Make sure the camera is working and not going to overheat. Awesome. Okay. Looks like things are working. All right. Hey, how's it going? Okay, so yeah, let's kick off the stream and get things going here. I figure we'll just do a regular Saturday live stream Q&A session. I didn't do one last week. I try to do these on a regular basis, but sometimes things just catch up to me. So I'm back at it. And we'll just do, yeah, like I said, a regular Q&A. So feel free to start dropping in your questions. As we get started here, though, I'm going to, of course, mention that if you guys want additional review information along with, measurements and the headphone measurement database that we have so far on the forum, the links to all that stuff are down in the description below, along with my headphone ranking list, over your headphone ranking list. Of course, this format is the perfect format to disagree with, or tell me all the reasons why you disagree with my opinions. That's what we're here for, the spicy takes. So, audio is good, awesome. No unicorn headphones, not today, but so those are ones that we actually bought from Amazon, and like we were like, oh yeah, we're gonna just return them, right? But I think at this point we've all sort of fallen in love with how ridiculous they are, so we'll probably keep them. We're not doing giveaways anymore. We probably will get back to doing giveaways. I just it's more that we need to figure out the best ways to do that and the formats that we're going to use. So we're it's just one of the things that we need to get to, and we haven't had a chance to yet. But it is on the radar to do again. Send precog fission to Siberia. Thanks, Rob. Man, you donate a lot, so just you know how it is. Don't feel you need to do this. You can reach out to me via email and spend your money on headphones. Any thoughts on the new Rode headphone? We actually ordered one. It should be here next week, and I'll do a review soon. I think DMS is working on a review as well, but that's probably going to be on his channel. Guten Abend aus Deutschland. Great to see you. Likewise. I sold all my audio gear and bought the Thank you. Thanks for your reviewing, giving me inspiration to buy them. Amazing. Hi, are you wearing a Focal Elegia? The ear cups are a replacement. I answer this every stream. No, this is not an Elegia. This is an Elir with Utopia pads. It's like this headphone just like disappeared. Like it just doesn't exist anymore. I guess because it is discontinued technically, or end of life. But they are still like there is still the Alex, right, which is the same headphone, just different pads. So it's an Elir with Utopia pads, and Utopia pads kind of bring the tonality a lot closer to that of the Clear. And I did a recent measurement of it. Maybe I'll post that at some point, because in my view, this is sort of an underrated combo, or not that known or talked about combo. Now I also use it with a very specific amplifier, and I run it off of the 32 ohm out on the Amps and Sound Kenzie, and that sort of down tilts the whole thing. So some of those like peaks in the treble that exist with this combination, I mean, they exist, regardless. They're not really, like, they're lessened to a significant degree. and you get a little bit more bass presence. So I do consider it to be, you know, guilty pleasure. I wouldn't say this is particularly neutral, but it's just got a really pleasant balance. You know, mid forward, a lot of warmth down low. It's impactful, and then the treble, while present, is not, you know, fatiguing. It's sort of smoothed out a little bit as a result of using the tube amp. Let's see, HE 1000 V2 versus Aria Stealth. If $400 price difference, brand new. Okay. I need to get an HE 1000 V2 in. I have asked my contact there at Hifiman to see if we can borrow one, but those, I mean, the high-end stuff's not always the easiest to come by. I'll need to do that comparison because I have not had a chance to do that yet. Any rumors of the Elegia seeing an update anytime soon? Yeah, they've done it already with the Focal Celesti. I have one over there. It's in its little case because I use it portably. Or do you mean like with that specific design? Because no, I haven't heard. I don't know about that. A Resolve, one of the giveaways, making a comeback. I really want to win LCD5. That actually is one that we have not. That might be a good high-end giveaway at some point. Yeah, if we bring them back, that might be one for discussion. But we still need to, as I mentioned, talk about, discuss internally sort of how we're going to do that, right? That's more the question. Are you going to review the Shure 840A and the Rode NTH 100? Again, so yeah, yes to the Rode, but for the Shure, DMS actually is, I believe he might be working on some of that. So stay tuned for that on the channel. 560S or HE400 SE? That's a good question. I think actually, you know, you can't really go wrong with either one of those there, but it is going to depend a little bit on what you value. So the benefits of the 560S are that you get like better and further bass extension, which is weird to say because it's not a planar, and planars are usually better at that, but it is the one that gives you the full sub bass or more of the sub bass there. You just look at the measurements actually to get a sense of that. The issue with a 560S is that the lower, so upper, mid to lower treble balance is a little bit forward, so so it can be a little bit on the spicy side for the lower treble there, whereas the 400 SE is a little bit smoother, and also the 400 SE, I mean, I think in some ways, if it were me, man, I don't know, I would almost go 400 SE in an amplifier, but and then I would just EQ some stuff. That's maybe what I would do. Sounds like the new Rode headphone is the new go-to close spec. $450 is going to kill the AKG. I kind of don't think so for sound quality, but again, we'll see. I'm getting one in here shortly. So I've also spoken with somebody who's measured one on an industry standard rig, and he told me that like there's some issues in the mids, and it's not something you can't fix with EQ, of course, but you know, it's actually not you know, ahead of the AKGs for that kind of balance. But we'll find out because we will have one coming in here, like I said, next week. So stay tuned to the forum, which is where I'll be posting the measurements of that first, and then I'll also be adding it to the ranking list there, and to see sort of where it falls. Did you see the I don't know what that is. Altate Cal 1H? I don't know what that is. Sorry, I have not. Altiate? I don't know how to say that. Was Critical fair when he berated the Meze lineup? Fair, okay. Depends what you mean by fair. Dude, okay, you've asked this question a lot. So just don't spam. I'm going through as many of these as I can. So, was he fair? Okay, so when it comes to sound quality, I think his assessments are generally, you know, on the money. I think people are obviously listening for different things, and so here's the thing that I've always said, or at least I've been making it, you know, saying a lot more lately, is that there's no reason to think that everyone's attention goes to the same things. So, you know, what Critical might be listening for or where his attention goes might be different from where the attention from other people goes when they're listening to music on those headphones. But I'll tell you right now, the way I hear those headphones is a lot more similar to the way that Critical hears them. And so my assessments of the Meze sound quality is pretty similar. I think the only area where I think maybe he was not totally fair is there's a lot of people who buy those headphones because of the build and the design and the ergonomics and all of that stuff. And I think you have to really give props to Meze for that, because I think they are better than just about everybody out there. Like, I can't think of anybody else who does that better. At least in the high-end stuff. The 99 Classics, okay, yeah, that's a different question. But like for the high-end stuff, like the Empyrean and the Elite and stuff like that, the Meze stuff is ridiculous. So I think that's really, and as I said this in my reviews as well, like, yeah, I mean, there are certain things about the sound quality that might be enjoyable, but competitively, like if you think about the competitive landscape there for sound quality, you if you're going to be buying those headphones, I really think those other things, like the build quality, like the design, like the ergonomics, I think those things have to matter to you in order for it to be worth it, because strictly for the price points that they command, you can get better sound quality at those price points, if that makes sense. So I wouldn't have done that video, just straight up, like. And it's not because I work for headphones.com or anything like that. I wouldn't have done it the way that he did it, because I think there are good reasons to buy those headphones. But at the same time, I don't disagree with his assessment about the sound quality. I think he's right there. And I actually have to give credit to Meze for, like, I've never given a glowing review of a Meze product. Like, I've never, if you watch all of the videos that I've done on Meze products, they've been fairly critical, in a similar vein to what Krin has said about the sound quality. And Meze has never, come after, me and been like, oh yeah, you're not listening to it on this $10,000 source or whatever, right? Like, or they've been nothing but awesome about that. They've been like, yeah, this is, give your honest opinion, and thank you for it. So I have to commend them for that. Let's see. Can you help me pick between the IE600, Oracle, and Clairvoyance? Thank you. I'm very curious about the IE600. Unfortunately, I haven't heard it, because that's not actually... it's funny, like they sent out the press release, but it's not available in North America until sometime in the summer. So I just haven't heard it. I'm sorry. Between the Oracle and Clairvoyance, I would take the Clairvoyance. But I think at that price, at this point, now you're starting to look at some other contenders there. In some ways, the variations... I mean, I find the variations to be a little shouty, but I know that for most people, that's more correct. So I think that also is one to consider there. It's very technical, very impressive. And still, for me, I got to say, like... I go with the Duno SA6 at $500. I go with the Duno SA6 basically all the way up until the Monarch Mark II at this point. And I know, yeah, the variations is in there, and I'd use it with the Calidus 5K to get a little bit of that EQ in there, just to drop down like 2.7 to 3.3K a little bit. But beyond that, those are probably my choices. I mean, yes, I like the Clairvoyance a lot, don't get me wrong, but I think at this point, as far as bang for the buck and value, like the price points kind of, they shake that up a bit. I already answered 400 SE versus 560S. LCD5 or Utopia? All right, LCD5 is more technical. It is more detailed, better instrument separation and incisiveness. Utopia has better sense of that macro contrast, or people call it macro dynamics, punch, slam, all that stuff. And it also has a better tonal balance overall. I don't think anybody who listens to those two is going to really disagree with that, or few people would disagree with that if they heard them side by side. And so which one you get, I think, is going to be determined a little bit by whether or not you EQ. That's how I see that. If you do EQ, I would probably go LCD5. Without EQ, I would definitely go Utopia. It's not, and just to be clear though, it's not like the LCD5's tuning is like horrible or anything like that. It's just a little too mid forward and shouty for me, right? Like the that upper mid range. It's very different from other Audezes, but also it's funny, different in a good way, I think, because it is and those other ones, like you have like no ear gain, right? And on the new ones, it's like all the ear gain. So it's kind of funny that they switched it up like that. But yeah, I think overall, if it's me buying it, I probably would go LCD5. I think it is the more technically impressive. Even though, yeah, I love the Utopia, of course. New to this hobby, what's the difference between 16-bit and 24-bit audio? There's more bits in 24-bit audio. That's stuff that I just sort of stopped worrying about after a while, because I now use Qobuz for streaming, and I just use the Qobuz stuff, and I mean, yeah, like there's probably ways of getting like the best possible files, but I care about getting the best possible music, and I think that that's realistic. Best headphones for $500 for some fun warm profile. Interesting. Fun warm profile. Probably depends if you're talking open or closed. For $500. In some ways, it's gonna sound, someone's gonna get triggered by this, but in some ways, if you're looking for warm under $500, hard to really argue with. I mean, the 6XX and 650 are still contenders there, right? They have their limitations. It's a pretty tight soundstage and 3 blobby and all that stuff, but it's got a good warm tonal balance if you like that kind of stuff. If you want V-shaped, I think there's an argument there for like something like a harmonic dyne Zeus, but also I think probably that I didn't get a chance to review it, but I did review the similar versions of it, but those ones with those Fostex drivers, the Foster drivers, the EMU teaks should probably be on your radar for that fun kind of warm sound. They're more like closed or semi-open, semi-closed, whatever, right? I didn't try that one specifically, but I did try the like the Ebony TRX00, and the teak is supposedly the better version of that, so I would put that one on the radar. Maybe also that, if you don't mind a little bit more of like a blunted presentation, or like a damped presentation, oh no, I'm pointing at the wrong thing. The DCA Aeon X Open is another consideration there. I think the closed is the one that has the better tuning overall. It is a little more analytic, but at the same time, it's got the better bass shelf, bass balance, and but at the cost of maybe just a little bit extra treble, whereas the open is a smoother treble, and it has more of that sort of bloom in the upper bass, lower mids. So I found that maybe that's better for certain genres like rock and metal and stuff like that, but for my music, the closed was just better. All right, next. I definitely need to try that IE600. I actually think that as much as the 7Hz Timeless is the best planar IEM that I've heard, I think there are better IEMs at that price. I'm sorry, I do. I would take that. It is more technical than most everything at that price, right? But I'm pointing here. It's in my backpack. Oh, no, wait. No, it is, yeah. I would take that, the Clinical C Audio Yume Midnight over the 7Hz Timeless. And I don't think, like, if people are doing apples to apples comparisons, I don't think that that's that crazy of a take. I don't think that I'm in the minority there. But there's a lot of inertia behind the 7Hz Timeless, for good reason, because it is very good at what it does, and I do highly recommend it. It's just that it is too sibilant in the treble for me, and that the bass isn't very distinct. It's elevated, and it's a lot of people like that kind of profile, but it's not a specific shelf, and I prefer a more specific shelf. So, yeah, I just think that there's stuff that where the tuning is a little bit better among other IEMs that aren't planars. All right. Best. Oh, wait, did I miss something here? I always end up losing my place on this. I'm sorry, guys. All right. Making sure I cover all these super chats. Do you think the Edition XS is the best open back under $500? It certainly makes a strong case for itself. I think there's probably something else that you could find there in the used market, maybe. And for some people, that headband just doesn't work at all. So if you have a smaller head, the answer to that's probably no. But if you have a larger head, I would say yes. What do you think about Nanda versus Edition XS? Definitely did a video on that already. With EQ, you know, I would personally probably choose Edition XS because it has cup swivel. Let's see. Do you think the LCD XC is the best sub bass in a closed back headphone? I want to buy one. Only if you EQ it. If you don't EQ it, you're going to feel like you lose out. Because, like, I mean, honestly, sub bass in a closed back. Sub bass in a closed back. I have to think about that one. In some ways, I would almost go dynamic driver there. Because, like, when people say, like, oh, yeah, they want the best sub bass, that doesn't really tell you what they want out of their bass, right? I just get the feeling that they really like bass and they want bass to be good. And for good bass, I'm going to say, you know, those Focal headphones do an amazing job at that physicality. Better than, you know, most planars. So, if not all planars. So, in some ways, I would say, you know, maybe something like the Radiance would actually be better. But I will say personally that when I did that comparison between the LCD XC, the Celestia, and the Radiance with EQ and the LCD XC, it was not. I was like, wow, that LCD XC is very, very technical. You know, so if you can handle the weight of the XC and you EQ, then I would say XC for sure. What products are you most excited about this year? Well, the IE600 is one that I definitely want to try, so maybe I can get DMS to send that one over. But other than that, I do want to try that ZMF Atrium. I've reached out, but you know, Zach hasn't gotten back to me, so I don't know if that's something that's sort of in the cards for us. I think he's, you know, probably got a million emails for that thing, right? So maybe one day we'll be, you know, high enough up on the list to get a review unit, but or if somebody can send one in. But yeah, that's the one that at the moment I am the most excited about. I mean, like for me, it's like, you know, there's a lot of headphones that come out that are like good, but yeah, and I'm excited for them in the sense that it might shake up like the landscape at a given price point, and then it's exciting because it gives us something, you know, interesting to talk about, to have like a new paradigm shift for, you know, here's a, you know, given price point, this is the best thing there, or at least, you know, what I think is the best thing there. You know, because for the longest time, those like best at whatever price have stayed the same. Apart from that, for the high end stuff, the stuff that I am personally excited to hear as a potential for like things that I might want to buy, that Atrium is on that list. But there's other stuff too. There's some stuff that I can't talk about that I'm excited about. And I'll hopefully be able to talk about that soon. But yeah. You'll just have to stay tuned on that question. Sorry, I know that doesn't. It's not satisfying. Running the Sendara on a LG V30, would something like iFi Zendac be an upgrade? Other suggestions? Yes and no. So I don't know if you found this, but like with the V30, what I really didn't like about it was that you had to kind of spoof the V30 into for planar magnetic headphones into giving it more power, because it the amount of power that it gives you is determined by the impedance. And oftentimes planars, they require more power, but they have low impedance. So it's not the greatest for planars. In fact, I would say it's actually quite bad for planars. In that sense, I think, yes, the Zendac would be better, but the Zendac on its own isn't something that has really all that much power either. So I would go with, I don't know, there's got to be DAC amp combos for like $150 that have enough power. There's got to be. And off the top of my head, I can't think of anything in particular, but I'm sure there is. So, yeah. I would use one of those headphone calculators to see if the Zendac can give you enough power for the Sendara. I haven't done that specific calculation. I need to look up what the actual specs in the Zendac are. The other nice thing about the Zendac is that it does give you the bass boost function, I believe. Double check on that. I know that the Zencan gives you that. And the Zencan would have easily enough power for that thing. Let's keep going here. I didn't find the variations shouty. It's one of the best under $1,000. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is that like it is a more generally correct tuning, but I'm just saying I personally find those in IEMs, like the ones that have a lot of ear gain there, like the variations, I find those to be a little bit shouty, and I prefer the sound of like the Dunu SA6, and I think that just has to do with my specific ear canal, and people like me who have ear canals like mine might find that to be the case as well. All right. Should I buy the Mest Mark II? I have no idea. I haven't heard it. What is the... here we go. Thank you, Chef Steve. You're always here with the spicy takes. Good on you. What's the most overhyped headphone in your opinion? Overhyped. Okay. DT 1990 Pro. Did not take me long to say that. I actually want to get another one in because I want to get those Taconi pads and see how that changes the frequency response in the treble. Yeah, I would say DT. I mean, to a certain extent, just Bayers in general are overhyped. Every Bayer I've heard is, except for, like, weirdly, that Tiger 300R was pretty good for the price, I thought. I mean, the tuning was a bit weird, but, like, it was detailed at least. And I think, I don't know, I need to still do that thing where I change the filter on the in front of the driver there to see how that affects things. But those new ones that they came out with, the DT 900 Pro X and DT 8 or 700, I mean, the tunings are okay, but like they're decent in certain ranges, but man, they sound dull and blunted as all hell, like worse than the previous ones. So in some ways, I guess the DT 770 isn't overhyped for people who like V-shape, right? That makes sense. I'd probably recommend that even. But yeah, like it's more like I think everybody needs to sort of like take a step back, and kind of think about like why is it that like there's a certain narrative in the public consciousness about given products, and where does that come from? And kind of reevaluate things in a bit of a vacuum, as if they're coming at it for the first time. And then making assessments, because I think there's a lot of that narrative inertia for headphones like the DT 1990 Pro that come from an older time. That these days, if it were released today, it would not be received with quite as much fanfare. That's just a hunch, but I think So, I was watching actually a video by Oh shoot, I should find the name of the channel. It's like Amplify Audiophile Show. It's the one from Sajid Amit, who he is like such an awesome dude, and he's got very, you know, well considered thoughts on these topics. And he said a very similar thing about like the way that, you know, we think about things like, you know, whether or not something has soundstage and what that means, right? There's a lot that goes into that, and and these narratives start to get formed around things. But you know, it's maybe a different thing when you actually have them on hand and you're A/Bing them, and you might find that like what matters is actually not necessarily congruent with the narrative that you see online about something. Was there another super chat? There was. Okay. Lock 9. Inevitably, that's what these shows are about. Is is the A90? Oh man. Can you please talk again about how much you dislike the sound of the A90 amp? It's always the best part of the show. I at some point I need to stop talking about that and just do a video. It is no secret I am not a fan of that amplifier, but I have to give all credit and respect to John Yang for being able to design things that have, you know, low noise and distortion. You know, they measure well, and I think that's a good thing for the industry. Let's make stuff that isn't broken. You know, and it's an important voice. I think it's an important. Those are important products. You know, because it forces everybody else to be competitive in that area as well. But yeah, I am still working to get that ABX comparison box up and running. It's just there's like a million things that are going on right now, and I haven't had time to actually focus on that project. But it is on my radar, and it is a priority for, let's say, this month at some point. Okay, let's see. Frequently, I see people criticize Audeze's tuning. Why haven't they fixed it? Okay, so I think you're probably going to need to qualify that a little bit, because not all Audeze headphones are tuned the same, and not all of the criticisms about their tunings are going to be pointed at the same things. So what I think you're referring to is maybe some of the older tunings, because I would say that the 2021 stuff is a lot better than the previous stuff. I mean, 2021 and forward, right? Like the LCD X 2021 is a lot better than the previous memory foam one. But there is a more general question there about Audeze tunings and the fact that the narrative around all their headphones continues to be, these are amazing if you EQ them. I have a suspicion that a lot of this is down to them not wanting to make concessions on some of the stuff that they hear for things that we call technicalities. And I don't know, because I haven't had this conversation with the gentleman there who is their designer. I don't know if I should say his name. I don't want to out him as the designer, but I haven't had these conversations with him, and so I don't know if that's exactly why. But I imagine that there is some element of that where, yeah, they could probably tune things, you know, to be a little bit more normal, let's say. But they just don't feel that they don't feel that is the lesser of two evils, or that incurs some other trade-offs that they're not willing to make. You know, you have very different approaches to this kind of stuff when you look at like the different planar magnetic headphone manufacturers. You have Hifiman on the one hand, who they go for very large diaphragms, and because they're aiming for basically all the upper frequency stuff that they can get without sacrificing the resonance frequency down low, and then not giving a shit about front seal, right? So and they can sort of get away with that with most of their headphones. Then you have, and also I get the feeling that Hifiman also, they don't really focus that hard on uniform movement of the diaphragm, because they did go to single-sided magnet arrays for a lot of their lower end stuff, I think for their higher end stuff, they keep the double-sided stuff going. And I think a lot of that's also to reduce the weight. But you sometimes see the consequences of, their headphones. They don't have as low distortion as what you see with Audeze's. And you also see more effects of large diaphragms in driver modes. The sort of like, I've called them wibbles. That sort of like wibbly mid-range that you sometimes see. That stuff's not really audible, but you do see it in the frequency response graph. So that's one approach. The other approach is the one that Audeze does, which is they'll go for much lower distortion typically, and higher resonance frequency, fewer driver modes, smaller diaphragms. Not smaller than all of them. They're still generally large, but they're smaller than the Hifiman ones. And they also do have more driver damping than the Hifiman ones do. And then you have the DCA headphones, which are even much smaller diaphragms. They're some of the smallest, and they do a lot more with they do a lot of front damping of the driver as well, to kind of make sure that the tuning isn't you don't have those resonances coming through above like 5K and stuff like that. And so it's just interesting. You see very different approaches to this kind of stuff among the different manufacturers. Let me just see what was the question. Why are we talking about this? Oh yeah, the Audeze tunings. So I imagine Audeze could look at the way that DCA does the front damping, for example, and go, yeah, we could do that, or that's a neat idea, right? But they'd rather not. They'd rather probably err on the side of let's say what they think is the more technical or more detailed sound, right? That's just my suspicion, and again, I haven't talked to anybody about that. I don't know that that's what the calculus is going or is internally, but I suspect that there's some sort of like, yeah, we could tune it this way, but why would we approach. And that's also why I think you see a willingness to do the Reveal Plus stuff that they do, like the DSP settings that they have. Because I think even internally they know, these headphones can do a lot with EQ. There are no real hard limits there. Sub bass and a close back equals ZMF icon. Yeah, but that's not at $500. Eddie Wolf, thank you. Your opinion on the Hifiman HE1000. It was great at the time, and I think it's still great, but they've moved to different versions of that now, like the V2 and the SE. I will say the SE is very technically impressive, but the tuning is a bit bonkers for me. It's too bright. I need to try the V2, though. And compare that again, as somebody mentioned, to the Aria Stealth. That'll be an interesting comparison there. And as actually Precog mentioned, a lot of the Hifiman headphones, the tunings are very similar among them. Like they end up with that same kind of, especially for the ones that have that same design with the egg shape. Like the cups, the elongated cups there. They're very similar. Regarding snake oil, which company do you think gets away the most with peddling it these days? It's difficult for me to say because I am going to say Abyss actually, but that's only because I'm not. There's a lot more snake oil peddling that goes on, like outside of the headphone world, like in the speaker world. There's a lot more of that, so take that with a grain of salt, right? Like I'm not aware of all of the different snake oil peddling that happens, but the interesting thing with Abyss is so there's absolutely the snake oil elements of what they're doing, like, and I don't think that, like, if anybody is taking a critical look at what's going on there is 100% a snake oil component to it. Like the cable thing, that like somebody kind of took one of their cables apart and found that it was just like a sleeve, somebody else's cable. And then some of the um, you know comments on source equipment, right? But the other side of it is that Abyss headphones, as much as they are non-linear in just about every way possible that you can think of, they are the most important counterexample to frequency response and target adherence not being all there is. Because if you listen to those headphones, and again, I'm going to guarantee that most of the people who've read online and all these comments about, oh, this company is like snake oil and whatever, they've never actually listened to an Abyss headphone. I bet they haven't. Because if you actually listen to those headphones, you understand that these are also shockingly detailed. And so it's important to, I think that's an important thing in the industry to exist. So, like, don't mistake me for saying, oh, the Abyss stuff is all, like, it's all snake oily and whatever. It's like, yeah, like, there's a lot of stuff that is sort of rooted in madness. But it is such an important thing for the industry to recognize. It's such an important counterexample to all of the things that let's say the more objective evaluations point towards as good ideas, when you actually get a chance to listen to those headphones. So that's why it's a difficult question to answer, and it's not really fair to Abyss to say that, oh yeah, they're the most snake oil company out there, because I don't think it's I like, yeah, if you listen to those headphones, you will, I almost guarantee that you will change your mind about, if you're, I don't know, somebody who is skeptical about this quality of technical performance, and you look at the Abyss the AB1266 frequency response, and you think that is pure madness and all the high harmonic distortion and all that stuff. There's no way that's going to sound good. If you listen to those headphones, I promise you will change your mind about this stuff. There is something there, right? There is something very interesting there, and it just goes to show that there is more for us to learn. It's headphones like that demonstrate that the book hasn't been closed on the metrics that we find valuable, or the ways that we're analyzing them. So, it's a good question, but I don't really have a very satisfying answer because I'm not aware of all the rest of the stuff that's out there. I'm only aware of the drama that you sometimes see online. Sajid is awesome. Yes. Big shout out to Sajid. And I don't know if he watches these, but if he does, you're awesome, dude. Keep doing what you're doing. I actually would love to have him on this live stream that we do. I think he's a great pillar of the Head-Fi community, and yeah, it would be great to talk to him. I think people keep asking because there's not much out there about picking good amps and DACs for your specific headphones. Yeah, I know, and I know we need to do more of that. It's a sore spot, and I need to yeah. Once we have, so like right now what I'm working on is like, I could give you all kinds of subjective impressions about, the A90 versus the Rebel amp versus, whatever, right? Or does the Shit Magni Heresy sound as good as the Bakun, right? Like I could do these comparisons subjectively, but unless I have anything to sort of anchor that to in like a blind test, or, I would say measurements, but even that on its own is kind of useless if you're giving subjective impressions, right? Or if the thing that you're focusing on is subjective impressions. So I don't think that I have the setup yet to be able to do the kinds of evaluations for source equipment that I want to do. And so at the moment I'm working on getting that set up, and then including doing source equipment measurements, because that stuff is valuable, right? Like obviously not SYNAD, but like the individual metrics there are useful. And there's going to be ways of like distortion, could understanding where the distortion level is at, and for which harmonics is a useful thing. So just give me a bit of time on that, and I will have more and better evaluations of source equipment in the future. Because the last thing that I want is like, well, I don't want people to sort of, dismiss it for just being, pure subjective, without an ABX, so without blind testing, right? The other is, because auditory memory is so shit, I want to make sure that my assessments are actually correct, right? That I'm not being like the framing of different volumes, for example, isn't somehow playing a role, because that absolutely will play a role. And so that's why you need to have this A/B comparison, right? Otherwise, I'm literally unplugging it, plugging it into something else, right? Even that time difference is enough for for it to kind of skew things. Plus, it's annoying to have to constantly volume match. Open and closed movie can recs up to $900 used or new. Focal LX is pretty good from Drop. Oh yeah, the clear is I think it's around that. If you're in North America. Otherwise, the closed. I'm gonna go on a limb and say you probably want something with a bit more bass than the Hifiman, like a bit of a bass boost, because that makes movies fun, right? I could be totally wrong about that, but like, I don't know of any research that's focused on media consumption that isn't music, but it's interesting. To a certain extent, the Aurora's Audio Borealis, because it does have a bass boost. Not sure about the Australis. If you don't have a big head, I'm going to recommend the Celesti. I'd also recommend the Aeon 2 Noir for closed. It does have a bass boost there as well, but again, you need to make sure that that you get a good seal. But it's quite balanced, the tuning there. Yeah, that's a bunch of options. I in many respects though, I don't think you need to go that high, right? Like just for movies. Like I think you'd totally fine with like, honestly, like a harmonic Dine Zeus. I think would be totally fine for movies. What kind of sound signature should I look for when I want a fun-sounding headphone for rock and metal music? I'm looking for closed back for max $300. I do have an answer that hopefully can help. Metal-based. Hell yeah! I just watched that movie, Metal Lords, and it reminded me of all the things from my metalhead days. It was awesome. Yeah, I do have an answer for you. Look at the frequency response of the Aeon X Open, which is a great. Now I know it's open, but like that's a great, or semi-open. I don't know what you want to say, but like it's a great kind of tuning for those genres, because for those genres you often don't get the full sub bass, the frequency response getting tokened. Like the instruments are not going that low, and you want that presence to be there in kind of the mid bass where the boost is on the Aeon X Open. So I would recommend that. And then also, yeah, the treble is smoother. You don't want the treble to be too forward. You often don't want the ear gain to be too forward, so like the 3K region. You don't want that to be over the target, for example, in that situation. Because that'll be fatiguing, right? So look for frequency response or tunings that are kind of like that, I would suggest. Also, honestly, the HD 650, as much as it is not perfect, it has those similar characteristics. I do think that the ear gain's probably a little much, though, for metal. EMU Teak would be, again, probably another thing to look at. And again, I need to get one of those in, but yeah. All right. Question 2, what's the most underhyped headphone in your opinion? Aha, underhyped. Okay. Now we're getting even more interesting. You with the good questions. All right, underhyped. Probably the Allure with Utopia pads. All right, I guess I'm hyping that. And it's not really, because it's kind of the Alex is already pretty hyped. So Underhyped. Probably depends on what price range we're talking about. So let me think about this. That was a difficult question. Damn it. I'm looking around. Let's see if there's anything there. Underhyped, okay. To a small extent, the ZMFO Tour is going to be my answer. It kind of got lost a little bit in the hype of the Verite and the Aeolus. But the Tour is one of those that's just... I don't have it anymore, and I kick myself for that. Another answer there would be headphones that they're discontinued. They no longer exist in the new market, but like you can still find them used. I would say, the HE500 from Hifiman. Those are great. What else? I'll have to think about that. Maybe I'll get back to you on that one, because I think there are probably some that I'm blanking on right now. I'm not thinking about. Maybe honestly, maybe the LCD2F, because everybody talks about the LCD-X, but the LCD2F, it kind of gets lost because it's close enough in proximity. I need to also try an LCD3 at some point, because nobody talks about that headphone. Does it make sense? Sorry, I'll get to that one in a second here, but do you think if people own high-end headphones like Svara, Aria, HD100S, Clear, etc., they should auto-equalize it to the Harman target? Are they mostly better off doing it or leaving it alone on those? Oh, yeah, okay, so as I said this before, and I think there's a problem in our sort of collective consciousness about anytime that people see a measurement of, headphones relative to the Harman target, they think that the people who are, the reviewers who are doing the evaluations are glorifying this target as the thing that everything should be tuned to. In reality, I'm paraphrasing what a good friend of mine has said, because I completely agree with this assessment. All headphones should be evaluated in relation to the Harman target if we're using the Gross, and if we're using the not the new 5128, but for the other 711 couplers. Headphones should be evaluated relative to the Harman target, but they should not be tuned to match it. And the reasoning for that is in the and also they shouldn't be EQ'd to match it. And the reasoning for that is in that video that I did on the 10 stages of learning how to read headphone measurements, or 10 stages of reading headphone measurements. I think it's like stage 9, will give you an answer to that, to why that's the case. Now, since then, we actually had conversations with Sean Olive on this topic, and Sean seems to think that it's actually okay that the target is highly smoothed above 5K, or it's the smoothing that exists there. It's like 1/3 or 1/2 octave smoothing. He seems to think it's okay to have that smoothing at 5K because of the directionality of like basically as you change the direction, you'll find that sort of averages out. That region above 5K averages out. I talked about this a little bit in the last live stream, but I did a poor job of explaining it. But basically, there are features of the human ear that will shift depending on the position. There are features of the frequency response that are determined by the human ear above 5K. This is complicated stuff that will shift on a person-to-person basis, depending on the direction. And the argument that we put forward there was that it's just because they shift, that doesn't mean that they go away, right? So I think that's really where that is going to hinge on, which sort of side you fall on that. But to get back to your question there, should you EQ all of those to the Harman target? My answer is no. Like again, the other video there that was sort of the follow up to that one was the one on, the limits of EQ. And I said this in that video as well, that like there are things that make sense to EQ, like for example adding a bass shelf, but you shouldn't have to EQ things to the fine grained degrees, like with auto EQ or that kind of stuff for high end for headphones that you have. And this isn't just for high end headphones; it's for all headphones. You shouldn't have to do that, right? Like there are also high end headphones that have totally bizarre frequency response and tunings. And my answer there is like those are absolutely deserving of criticism and scrutiny. And you have the HD100S there. I'm gonna criticize that. That has too much 6K. You shouldn't have to EQ that. I mean, it might also give you an extra sense of soundstage that might be responsible for it, but I find that region of that headphone to be a little bit shrill. So I guess the short answer there is no. I don't think they should be auto equalized to the Harman target. I think you're better off leaving those alone, and when you do your EQ adjustments, just do simple things like adding a bass shelf or reducing the bass if it's too much, for example. But usually on open back headphones, you add a bass shelf, or just any of the major areas where you're like, I don't like the way that sounds. Where can I adjust it? But for the rest of it, like that. This is the thing that people miss about Harman, is that like the reference point there is not what you will necessarily like. It's not the perfect word for what constitutes good sound in headphones. It's just what most people happen to like. It's a coarse grained target for what most people happen to like. Okay. Now, with that knowledge, like you need to recognize that you may fall in a completely different, part of the segmentation. Right. When you look at the segmentation paper, and you look at the cluster analysis, there's people who like less bass. There's people who like more bass. They fall in all kinds of different places. So you have to think about yourself as an individual in relation to a general result, a general reference point. And how you might want things to sound could be different. In fact, probably will be different from the average there is, what the most common result is there. So I'll say this again. If your goal there is to make it so that all of your headphones don't sound wrong to most people, to other people, EQing it to the Harman target would achieve that result. And yeah, you should do that if that's your goal. But I'd like to think that if you are EQing things, that's probably not your goal. Your goal is to make it sound as good as it can for you. And so you need to kind of dial that in to your own preferences and based on your own ears. Wow, that's great. Car horn outside. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That the car horn didn't interrupt too much. Okay, now on to the next question. Does it make sense you like Soundstage when you review? Why don't you mention how far, how wide does it cross your shoulder? Can you throw it over your shoulder like a Continental Soldier? That's where the Soundstage goes. Yeah, I did a description of how far and how wide the throw of Soundstage is on those cat ear headphones, the purple unicorn headphones, by literally throwing. So when it comes to the Soundstage question, when I first started getting into this stuff, I used to pay a lot of attention to these kinds of things, like how distant things would sound, how far away, I'd close my eyes and I think, how many rows back am I if I'm imagining myself sitting at a concert, right? Those types of questions. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that those are not things that really contribute as much to the engagement of the whole thing. And this is where I think Corinne and I are probably going to disagree a little bit. But what mattered more was my ability to sort of, as Tile said, peer into the music. I always talk about, how you can isolate the individual instrument lines, right? So if you're hearing stuff where there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of busy passages or harmonies and things like that, being able to pinpoint perfectly and have a very distinct and separated image of different instrument lines mattered so much more to me than how far away they were, right? And as a good example of this, the Audio-Technica R70X is a very wide sounding headphone, but that's the only thing that I'd say it's good at for its technical capabilities. And I don't think I would choose it over something like a Sindara, which is not as wide, but has better instrument separation. So hopefully that answers that question. What do you see as the next step over the usual mid-fi Sindara 6 Sennheisers? Would you call headphones after that point better or simply different? Oh yeah, there's stuff that's definitely better. Yeah. Like once you actually get a chance to listen to some of the crazy high end stuff, you recognize that there are levels. Like there are distinct differences. Like I mean, an LCD5 compared to either of those two headphones, it's like there is no contest. It's not even remotely close. But and so no, at that point we're not talking about just different. But they are also different. Yeah. We already did a video review of the LCD5. I think we've done 2. Saw Grover joined Upscale Audio. Spicy take. His emo style didn't work for headphones for the headphone show. Things, yeah, didn't work out with him. I really like the guy, and it was nothing to do with his style. I actually didn't know he was working for Upscale Audio. That's interesting. But yeah, he's not going to be doing. There's not going to be any more Grover videos on this channel for the time being. Let's see. So why deeper pads make headphones sound so much different, and with the kind of soundstage it added to my. Guess you didn't finish that thought. I have somewhat of an answer to that. I think I get a sense of what you're getting at here. A lot of it has to do with so I need to learn more about this, because this is one area where I'm not that familiar, but I'm investigating it. But if you have headphones that are further away, right, and they say they're like the HD100S, where the driver is literally further away, and there's more distance there compared to like an HD6 series, right, where it's like literally just the driver's like a perfect line to your eardrum or like to your ear canal. There's a potential for more interaction. And when you change the pads on certain headphones, you're also changing that a little bit. Like you're potentially creating more interaction by changing the pads. And I'm told, at least, that this could have an effect on the perception of Soundstage. And this might be one of the reasons why the HD6 series is often, criticized for having a very tight soundstage. So I think that might be why you feel that there's more, you get a more larger sense of stage with different pads, right? Deeper pads specifically, because if you're moving it further away, right, then you're doing that. You're basically HD100S'ing it, if that makes sense. How much of staging / imaging capabilities in headphones / IEMs is in FR, and how much of it is in other characteristics? EQ'd my ER2 to IEF, to Crin's thing, and my perception of width widened, but depth was kind of ruined. So I would say most of it is FR, and you can actually do this. This is one of the things that I'm not gonna recommend sound demos as a accurate way of getting a sense of how things sound, but there are sound demos out there where they basically just taken. You can even hear it on most headphones, right? You don't need to have a reference headphone there for this to work, but you could take a HD100S, change the frequency response in the mids and the treble, and get it closer to the target, and the soundstage will collapse. Right? The things that used to be here or here wide are now a little more here. So you can definitely tell that it has a pretty significant effect. Now, is it solely responsible? Is there something else? I actually think that in large part, it's what we just talked about. It's how, like, when things are literally further away from your ears, you're gonna have you know more interaction and with your actual ears, and you're gonna have potentially a wider sense of stage. But the interesting thing, and this is where I like to kind of do more investigation, is like, well, what if you just tuned an IEM to the same result at the eardrum of individual people when you had an HD 100S, right? Would that end up sounding the same? And unfortunately, you can't actually test that because the head and torso simulators are not actual human heads. So you're not getting an actual human eardrum response comparison there. But I would say, I imagine that if you could get it to perfectly match, you would end up with the same result. I imagine that if it, like, and again, perfectly, all the way down to the finest grain little stuff, the stuff that, it's very difficult to EQ or to get it to perfectly match, then I think you would end up with the same result, most likely. Unless we're talking about stuff that's not non-minimum phase, which might have an effect. Do you plan on reviewing the Aria Stealth? Precog Vision already did that, so check that video out. I've already also done my measurements and commentary on it. It's up in the Headphone community forum already. My assessment is that it's, basically close enough to the V2 that it shouldn't matter. And there are things that are better about the Stealth. The only thing that I, highlighted there was I actually think that the treble balance is a little better on the Stealth because there's a little more 12K energy. But other people find that maybe a little bit fatiguing. So it depends on the age of the listener. Kimber. Okay. I don't know the story about the rest of, you guys are talking about the snake oil stuff. I don't know the story about the rest of that. So as I was saying before, like, the only things that I see are, some of the drama that happens online about, like, Abyss and whatever else, right? Any wire north of 10K is snake oil? Yeah. Yeah. I loved Josh Valur's video on Joshua Valor's video on cables, on he's released cables. That was hilarious, and I think that's the best way to think of it. Sorry, I'm just gonna get to the super chat here. LCD2C, I assume you mean classic, a worthwhile upgrade over the Sindara. Here's a spicy take. I'm gonna say no. LCD2F, absolutely, but the LCD2C, I don't think. I mean, it might be a more. You might prefer the tuning, right? There's, I can't say what you're gonna like, but if it were me, I would not upgrade to an LCD2 Classic. I would upgrade to an LCD2F if you can swing it. But also, I think there's other stuff up there as well, like an Alex. I would consider. I mean, it's an upgrade in some respects, but also not in others, depending on what you're after. Australis is also good for movies. Okay, I need to listen to that. Yeah. Syned is useful because high Syned indicate a higher quality product that translate to other things. No. Oh, this is Maya. I think you and I disagree on that. No, the Synad piece that we did, like, we sort of demonstrated that, like, that stuff is not. It's not really. It's not a useful metric, not because. People talk about, like, oh yeah, but doesn't it give you a safe value or a safe range, right? That you can say at least above this, you can get you can be confident, right? When the problem is that you still end up with stuff like the A90 scoring well on Synad when, like, I wouldn't pick that one, right? Somebody was asking for that. The A90 commentary. There it is. And then it's not just localized to that, right? Like, there's other stuff as well that scores really well on Synad that doesn't, disregarding the ground loop issues and stuff like that, like, beyond that, there's stuff where I'll give you another example. The Topping L30 had problems. It scored really well on Synad, right? If I remember correctly. It also had problems where it would blow up people's headphones. Now, I think they've since fixed that, but to the point that you just made there about high Synad indicating higher quality product, not in that respect. The same thing is true for the Magni 3 Heresy, right? Or the Magni 3s. They've also had problems with blowing up. I've literally had one blow up on me. Now, they didn't blow up the headphones, but yeah, I have a blown up Magni Heresy. Scores really well in Synad, but that's not an indication of it being a higher quality product in that respect. So I would say, I mean, people are of course going to disagree on the Synad question, right? Because they're so used to it, I think. And there's a lot of sort of claimed authority on that subject, but very obviously Amir and I disagree on it. I don't think there's any, even THD is something where like you would be shocked at how little that matters, unless it's awful. What up, Metal? We should get you on here again at some point. The next time you have something to talk about, we'll do that. Where's Metal? Yeah, I know. I used to have him like right here, like just there was a miniature Metal 571 who would always sort of whisper sweet nothings into my ear and tell me that I'm wrong about the LCD5. But no, I'm just kidding. He's since scampered off. He's into keyboards now. We should do keyboard reviews on this live stream. I still my desk is still covered in switches and like keycaps. I've not finished putting the other board together. Do you prefer a Lear with Utopia pads or just stock Focal clear? Good question. I need to do that comparison. Yeah, it's a good question. So the context there is that what I like about the Lear with Utopia pads is actually that it's an 80 ohm headphone, and I compare it with this tube amplifier. I would not be able to do that with the clear. Or, I mean, you could, but like you wouldn't use the 32 ohm out. You'd use like a lower impedance out because it would just boost the bass too much. I think the LCD XC 2021 is underhyped despite the moderate amount of hype it has. It does have hype, that's the thing. Yeah, so I would hesitate to say LCD XC 2021, but I think you're right. Like, especially like any of those headphones that like they might sound okay without EQ, but then when you do add a little bit of EQ, it's like they're really good. Like it's just adding a bass shelf. Those ones are a little bit underhyped, I'd say. What's your thoughts on costs? Legendary? That's my thoughts on costs. Sorry, I'm just catching up here, guys. I don't want to be too far back. I know if I missed your question, feel free to ask it again. But otherwise I miss like the discussion. Fellow Vancouver audio enthusiasts, anywhere else to demo cans other than the headphone bar? I used to go to headphone bar all the time. Travis is a really nice guy. Anywhere else? Well, I mean, I'd say you could come visit me in the studio, but no, it's not open to the public. Anywhere else? There is another place actually. There's two places. I think there's one downtown near Hastings, or near Gastown, but I'm not sure if that's still open. I don't know what the pandemic did to that one. And then another one, and I think that one was called Hi-Fi Center. And then there was another one in West Van, and I can't remember the name of that place. But that dude, I mean, a lot of it was just like a showroom. I don't know how much stock he actually had. So I don't know if you could like buy the stuff there, but like he had a lot of stuff there on demo. Yeah, there's also our office is also in Vancouver, in downtown, where you can. It's not open to the public yet, so I don't want to make false promises. I need that Stax X9000. I mean, the problem is with that stuff is it's difficult to get a hold of, right? Like, I'd love to review one. That's if someone were like, yeah, I have one for you to review, I'm like, yes, please. Same with the Atrium, right? Of course, I don't want people to, like, sometimes people do ask me. I actually did have someone reach out to me offering to, send their ZMF Atrium in for review and measurements. I obviously want to, but I don't want to deprive people of listening to the stuff that they just bought. You know what I mean? So I want to give them at least a chance to, like, enjoy it. Because that feels like shitty. Like, oh yeah, off you go. Like, there's a whole part of that buying a ZMF headphone thing where there's like the anticipation, right? You see your name on the, I don't know if he's still doing it this way, but like you see your name on the spreadsheet and you keep refreshing that to see if he's updated it, to see if you're further along. Like, and then that element, like to immediately send it off to a reviewer to measure, like, that doesn't sit right with me. Do you still own and enjoy the Verite Open? I do still own it, and I do still enjoy it. I've been dialing my EQ in a little bit more lately as well, and also trying out different pads. So I don't know if maybe I'll make that public when I finally settle on something. But like a lot of it is just sort of like, trying more stuff. But yeah, I still have it, and I still use it. It's just at the studio right now. Zach said in Reddit there's going to be an Atrium closed. Yeah, I saw that. I was tempted to join in on that discussion, but just didn't have time. Yeah, cool to see Zach on Reddit and sort of engaging there on those discussions. I think it was on Precog's CanJam Impressions thread. But yeah. I noticed what you said there, Metal, also about the 5.5K peak, and I think you're right. Like they all sort of tend to have that. Some more so than others. Definitely. But also, of course, the pads have an impact, and I can kind of see why Corinne's measurement there needs a bit more context, because two things. One was the pad question, but the other is what I found is like it's so dramatic a difference with clamp pressure to the point where, how you can kind of bend them and have more clamp pressure. If you do that, you will end up with a very different result than if it's just sort of hanging there. So I think there needs to be more comprehensive and more rigorous. I'm not goalpost shifting on that. I'm only goalpost shifting on the result that he got there is a result that's accurate for that condition. But my point is that the conditions do change, or a change in conditions can lead to a dramatic change in the result. Lear 3 also blew up headphones. Oh man, they paid for them. Interesting. Yeah, that's what I'm saying though, right? Like, amplifiers should not blow up headphones, and they also shouldn't explode. Have you live streamed with DMS yet? A long time ago we did, but we need to do a live stream. So we will soon, I'm sure. Harry C. burned up one of your headphones? Okay, well, I'm glad they took care of you on that one. Yeah. For me, it just blew up. It didn't destroy anything. AB 1266 became more snake oil when they raised it to 6K. But this is what I'm saying, is people, before they make these judgments about those headphones based on A, the ridiculous price, and B, some of the like there's no two ways about it. Like there is some real unpleasantness that exists in that. When I say unpleasantness, I mean like, we could say snake oil, but like I'm saying like there's like some deep rooted madness that exists in that world, in that area of like, discrediting people's opinions, for one reason or another, if just because they don't, line up with yours, or because of measurements or something like that, or talking about, frequency response doesn't matter. Like that is absolutely something I'm going to plant my sort of stance or flag in opposition to. But at the same time, people who only make that commentary based on what they've seen from, you know, places like ASR or, you know, other people who are only focusing on that, have never heard it. They need to actually listen to those headphones before making those judgments. That's all I'm going to say, is because, you know, as I've said, those headphones are such an important counterexample to, you know, more linear equals more better. And it's like Metal will tell you the same thing. Like, he's heard them. Are they not detailed? Do they not slam? Getting back to thoughts on costs. Yeah. Endgame. I would love to buy another ZMF headphone. It's just like, I think if I weren't constantly reviewing and evaluating headphones, and I actually were buying headphones for myself, I would look at that. You know, like a closed back. Like, honestly, like I need to listen to the atrium, so I don't know, but like that idea about a closed back biodynamic that has a good tuning. Pardon me. That's really attractive to me. But I don't, as it is right now, I don't get that much use out of the headphones that I personally own, because I'm constantly reviewing other headphones. So, let's just I'm if I haven't answered your question yet, again, ask it again. But um, I have to catch up here, so I'm inevitably going to miss some of the questions. Do you have a headphone recommendations under 2K USD? Right now, I have my eyes on the Focal Clear Hifiman Aria SE. Are there any other headphones that you would recommend? I'll be using ADI2 for power. I'd also consider the Audeze LCD X 2021, HD100S. Depends what you like, right? ZMFO Tour also depends what you like. Hmm. There's a lot in that range. If you can handle heavy headphones, the Head Audio headphone. Um, what do you, okay, do you think R2R DACs are better? No. They're not necessarily worse either. That's just different. Um, but I don't get into that stuff. I haven't yet really spent any meaningful time with R2R versus, you know, a more off the shelf chip or something like that. I've tried some of the custom like DACs from Chord, but beyond that, most of my experience with different DACs is limited to either show conditions, which is like, I mean, you're evaluating DACs at that point, like it's hard to do that, um, or just, you know, stuff that uses a, you know, uh, 903 at pros and stuff like that, for, you know, 44 90 whatevers. What is a Valkyria? Interesting. Oh man, people talking about lockdowns closing businesses, not pandemics. It's yeah, we're not getting into that. People get real mad about that stuff. All right, let's keep going. Hmm. The ZMF list is agonizing. No, it's part of it, man. You gotta enjoy it. Michael, at some point we gotta get you on the live stream. We gotta collab. Have you tried the Element 3 by JDS Labs? I do really want to try that. And that actually, yeah, it does sound like a really convenient package, as you put it. Any thoughts on the Ferrum Airco? Nope. I need to get more of the Ferrum stuff into the studio. It is in the office, but it is at my boss's desk. And, yeah. I haven't been able to get in there and steal it from him. Which keyboard did you get? Are you asking me or Metal? I think you got a new one. I am using the GMMK Pro with Boba U4Ts that I did lube, and but it's not perfect. This is the problem with the keyboard hobby, is that eventually, even if you get something that's very good, it's still not perfect, and so you need more. Is there anything better than the Apple Lightning to 3.5mm adapter for portable audio? The Qdelix 5K. Yeah. Are you going to Can Jam Chicago this year? I'm not sure. I would like to. My LCD X 2020 is muddy. Please help me. Yeah. I'm sure it is. I actually did a EQ video on a 2020 version, LCD-X. You might want. It's an older video that I did on this channel that goes through EQing that headphone. Maybe give that a try. Anyone who is thinking about getting their endgame headphones shouldn't wait for World War III because it can deliver faster than FedEx. Wow. Very curious to check out Atrium and how it differs from my VC. Hopefully, can you check? Oops, sorry guys, that was probably very loud. This is not the best placement for a microphone. Yeah, I'm curious to try it out. Maybe the next Can Jam that I get to go to, I'll try out that. Yeah, JDS is a brand that I don't have enough experience with, but I'd love to. I hear good things. Does Taryn pay me enough? You have to ask him. It's not, yeah. It's not about that, guys. But, you know, for anybody who doesn't realize, like, we don't, you know, we're not doing the typical affiliate link kind of, you know, feedback loop that happens, you know, kind of ubiquitously when it comes to like YouTube channels. This is a very different kind of thing. You know, my income doesn't change depending on whether a review is positive or negative. It's it hasn't changed in the last however many years I've been doing this. So watch your video on the Focal plus Deconi pads, but meanwhile you're using the Utopia. What's the rundown? Yeah, I didn't get a chance to try these. Like, now that I have, so I actually have like all of the Focal headphones at the studio. Or I think I have almost all of them. I'm not sure if I have Legia there. And I have almost all the pads. I might do like another full comprehensive rundown on that. So my assessment at the moment though is that like those original Alere pads are not that great, or like the other pads are better for the tuning than the original Alere pads. The clear pads are fine, the Utopia pads are fine, and some of the Deconi pads are fine. That's my on the open back ones, I should say. That's sort of my general take there. For the closed back ones, the you're better off going with the pads that are by default on the headphones than any of the aftermarket ones, and also you're better off not swapping them to different. Like, so for example, you don't want to use the Allegia pads on the Radians, for example. I mean, they fit, but like I would stick with the Radiance pads, if that makes sense. With one exception there, and it's that you can put the Celesti pads onto the Allegia, and it does actually improve the tuning a little bit. But that's basically it. And I think you could, I mean, there's maybe an argument there for the Celesti pads and the Stellia, but I haven't done that comparison. Zach says you can try the new Titan mesh damping in a version without holes on the various CMFs. So it's probably the try on the Aeolus. Does your Aeolus have a 5.5K peak as well, though? I mean, I'm perfectly happy to EQ it, so I don't know if I need to do that, but it'd be interesting. I'm also just like trying other pads just that are not ZMF pads, like just to see what happens and what the differences are. Just because I'm just curious more than anything else. I'm very happy with where I'm at with my EQ on it right now. Paid by the like. Yeah. You appreciate the less frequency-oriented chat this week. Well, we haven't gotten there yet. Taryn's in the chat. I let him review the Stinku and the Fanny Unicorn. It's measurable value. Immeasurable value. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Taryn pays me in sunshine and rainbows. And Fanny Unicorn headphones. I'm just getting into the whole hi-fi thing, really. I will not spend a single penny without extensive research. Smart on the subject. So there's a lot more to read for sure. There certainly is. Have you looked at the Calidus stuff? Heard from Crin's Kanjo video. So I watched his video and I saw that and I went, wow, I need to try one of those. Because it wasn't to do with anything to do with the headphones. It was the way that guy represented himself, the guy from who Crin interviewed there, and his ability and willingness to kind of like be honest. You know, like no other manufacturer is going to say that, right? Like, you know, we're not doing anything special. This is not a magnum opus. This is nothing unique. This is super normal, and we're just trying to get a generally good tuning that most people are going to like. Like, wow. He's like, yeah, this is not we didn't design anything unique. We didn't do anything unique. We just took an off-the-shelf driver. We tuned it how we think most people will like, and we created a good housing, and we think we're offering something fair for the price. Like, that's admirable, and because of that, I want to try his stuff. And the industry needs more of that, in my view. People being, transparent, honest. And there's a lot of companies that are, like, again, talk about Dunu, as one of the shining examples there, and there's lots of companies that are like that, but like to see that from the way he did that was just such a contrast to some of the stuff that happens. All right, I think I've caught up. So again, feel free, if I haven't answered your question, feel free to ask it again. Is there a headphone that should be re-released? Yes, there are many. Let me start with the original HE6, or the 6-screw, let's say. 4-screw or 6-screw, but I'm going to say 6-screw. The HE500 absolutely should be re-released. The HD580, one of the versions there, Metal can tell you which one. The Focal Alir with Utopia pads. What else? Those would probably be the ones that are at the top of my list. Hey, Resolve, love your reviews. If you had a Patreon, I would subscribe. Just ordered the closed X. Oh, and closed X, I think you mean? Yeah. And have this shit held to E. Will it provide enough power for the closed X to reach their full potential? I don't know enough about the Hell 2E, honestly. But I will say that a Magni Heresy will, 100%. But I don't know about the 2E. I mean, what is full potential? But for volume, yes. But like, yeah, there's people who are going to run it off of like, they're going to be saying, oh, you need class A, you know, etc. And sure, you know, but at that point you're spending $500 plus on an amplifier. I found lyric. Oh, and sorry, to get to the what you said about the Patreon thing. I appreciate that. We haven't really talked about doing that. I don't really want to like gatekeep stuff. The only reason to do that would be if so like this is something people don't know, but like people like Kryn, probably more so Kryn than me, but also to a lesser extent me, we will often get sort of inundated with purchase advice questions that we just, if we were to answer them all, we would never do anything, right? Like we would never actually have the time to produce any reviews. So that would be the only reason to do it, is just as a way of kind of still doing that, but not basically creating some sort of like, you know, category there for like, you know, this is the time when we will do it, and then the platform that we will do it on. But I also at the same time am hesitant to do that because I don't want to, you know, lock that off to certain people, right? To people who wouldn't want to participate. So at the moment there is no Patreon and there is no immediate plans to do that. But it's not out of the question. Oh, THX00, yeah, there you go. That's another great example. So sorry, you're saying Cardus. I was saying Calidus? Calidus, not Cardus. Cardus is, I think, cables? Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know enough about that. Any news on the Dunu Vulcan? No, I don't know more about that, but I would love to review it when it comes out. To this point, we're like, I know I don't really like put that much stock into like, you know, like I'm not gonna say, you know, brand A is better than brand B. I'm gonna evaluate products, right? But at this point, basically anything Dunu releases, I'm excited about. So I will temper that earlier statement with, there are certain brands where new releases get me very excited. You know, brands like ZMF and Audeze and, you know, Dunu, of course. Sennheiser. Sorry, I'm just gonna back up here a second. I found the lyric quite sibilant and tizzy. Am I hearing it right? People seem to love it. I didn't find it sibilant. I found it a little honky in the mids. So I'm not sure. But what you hear is what you hear, you know. What is the direct upgrade from the Sandara? To a certain extent, I will say that the answer to that question probably depends on if you EQ, because I would say, you know, Audeze LCD2F or LCD-X 2021. Again, with the 2021 pads and stuff like that, not the memory foam stuff. But you will still probably want to do a bit of EQ there. The closer like upgrade would be the Edition XS, but I don't know if you already have the Sandara. They're similar enough where I don't think it's worth it really, or I don't know if I would say, yeah, you should, you know, like that's kind of like I don't know, it's not really sunk cost fallacy because you're buying a different product, but like it's a similar kind of fallacy where like you're getting something that's like only incrementally a little bit better, or better for certain things, but not categorically better, if that makes sense, and similar enough. Can you do an IEM ranking at some point? Any plans to review the new IFI Zen Air line? I don't know enough about that. Maybe. It's not immediately on my radar though. When do you think Sennheiser will make a new headphone in the HD6 lineup, since it's been almost 5 years? Consider the HD560. I think an HD6 with a completely new driver would be awesome. Yeah, it'd be sweet. We'll see what the new direction is going to be for, because they recently got bought, the consumer division. So we'll see about that. It'll be interesting. How noticeable are the lack of dynamics on the A unclosed X? I just want something casual for the office or the TV. For casual, well, honestly, some people don't even notice it. I'll tell you that much. If you're comparing it directly to something like this, you notice it. It's very obvious. But if you've never cared about that quality before, you're in luck. I would like to know your opinion of the Audeze LCD 4/4Z. How would you describe them in comparison to the LCD X sound-wise? I mean, yeah, I can't really comment on the 4Z, but I can tell you that the LCD X 2021 is a much better tuning overall. But the LCD 4 is still one of the more technically impressive headphones out there. It's more, technically impressive than the 4. But sound-wise, like, If I couldn't EQ, I'd probably still go for the LCD X 2021. Thankfully, I can EQ, and if it's between the two, for sound, both EQ'd LCD 4, absolutely. What do you think is the reason why Hifiman could not bring back the HE500? Good question, and I don't know the answer to that. But for some reason, I feel like it might have something to do with the, when they moved their production to for the same reason that they don't do the HE6 anymore. I think they scaled up their production in a number of ways, which doesn't allow them to do the same process that was required for the HE500. That's a hunch. Don't know if that's true, but that's what I imagine. I mean, in some ways, I think they probably also, they went to the HE560, right? And they made it lighter, made it single-sided. And then also, they changed it up a little bit. It was not as good as the HE500. But maybe they thought it was. Aeolus is a killer peak, but also sounds like a resonance, so it's only so EQable. Hence why I want to try damping. Oh, I see. Okay. The original one I reviewed had original mesh without holes and was less peaky. Interesting. Okay. I did not know about that. Bought the Focal Clear Professional. It doesn't come with a 4-pin XLR cable. I'm using the THX AAA 789. Question, is there a point to invest in a 4-pin XLR cable? If so, suggestions to acquire one. Not really for Focal. The reasons to do it would be to use the amplifier's the amplifier's output that the amplifier was designed around. Because oftentimes, I don't know enough about that THX 789. If that's the case, it might not be. But there are a lot of other amplifiers out there where a single edit is just a tack on. I am going to say though, don't spend much on cables. Don't spend hardly, buy them reasonably inexpensive if you are going to do that, because the sound difference won't be significant, even if there is one. Thoughts on Burson amps? Thinking about getting Soloist 3. I don't have. You're asking the wrong guy. But hesitant on spending $1,000 on an amp, understandably. When the headphones make most of the difference. Correct. Yeah. My setup is HD6XX, LX, LCD2C, iFi Zendac /CAN. iFi Zendac /CAN can power all of those headphones just fine. So I honestly, buying a $1,000 plus amplifier as a means of changing the sound, I think, meaningfully changing the sound, you're better off just doing a bit of EQ. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other reasons to get that stuff. So I'm just thinking more along the lines of future proofing and stuff like that. In some ways, I actually think the more interesting buy would be, and I know it's a lot more money, but the amps and sound can see with the 32 ohm out. I know I keep saying that, but this is like my guilty pleasure, and I love it. It's yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, is where you gotta have lots of samples on hand to be really confident. Yeah, I know, I know. Um, from what Resolve said about the stealth, it seems he doesn't think much of the new metamaterial tech. Dan hinted it might find its way into other DCA headphones. I don't know why you got that impression. I think it's very interesting. It's an interesting way of... So, before he did that, he also did other unique things with the waveguide that was also in front, if I remember correctly, rather than behind. And I just think it's interesting. To me, it's less of a like revolutionary thing because it is just a different kind of damping, right? But it is a more sophisticated kind, right? Or it's a more, I mean, it's a waveguide essentially. Sorry, not damping, waveguide. It's just a much more sophisticated one, and I think it's interesting. Yeah. So I don't know why you got the impression I didn't think much of the metamaterial tech. I don't think much of the term metamaterial, but that's about it, right? I think it'd be sweet if, like I'm not a fan of DCA's open headphones all that much. I think the closed ones are the better ones for the tunings, and if that idea, that piece can be used to give it the open ones, a more similar tuning to the closed ones, I'm all for it, right? Why not? Like for his open back headphones, oh god, car horns. For his open back headphones, like I just think you need to use like way larger drivers or something that has like higher moving mass to have, so you can have an easier time with getting full bass extension without requiring a seal. Like that would, or doing other kinds of stuff. But then, of course, that increases weight, right? So these are all trade-offs that you have to think about. Is there more money in headphones or IEMs? What do you mean by more money in? You mean like margins? I don't. I don't think that. I don't think that I have an answer on that. I don't actually know, because I don't. Fit in that part of things, right? That's a question for Taryn. But honestly, I have no idea. I think more than like making that the distinguishing point, like between headphones and IEMs, I think it more has to do with where they're coming from and the price points that get set, the order quantities, that type of stuff, like that the manufacturers are making for parts and things like that. Yeah, we'll get the Rode NT H100 in at some point here, probably next week. I like the lack of dynamics on the Noirs. See, this is why this stuff is so ridiculous, right? Like, I might be like, yeah, that's I miss that physicality, right? Like, and I mean, the Noir is one thing, but I was talking about the Aeon X close before. They definitely sound critically damped, or just whatever that ends up being, right? But some people like it. So, really appreciate the work and thoughtfulness that goes into your reviews. Would you mind comparing Focal Stellia to the ZMF VC? I really wish I could, because I just don't have a VC in, I can't do that. The over-under odds at 5.5 on how many times Resolve says the Harman curve. I probably don't say the Harman curve. I probably say the Harman target. Or Harman research, because really that's the biggest thing. the biggest issue there is that like we only ever use the one target there, and we don't make reference to the rest of the research. And so people are bound to have, like I was just dealing with yesterday, another, like just the most common mischaracterization about it, right? Like where people just see the target and they don't actually bother to read the research. It's their own fault. They are, you know, the fact that the publication model for that is just like a whole bunch of different articles that you have to kind of read one by one, that once you've read them all, it eventually just the whole thing fits together. You're like, oh, like they're all different pieces of the same puzzle. On their own, you know, there's all kinds of room for like, but what about this? But that doesn't work. But what about this, right? And it turns out that no, that it's actually really comprehensive. And so I don't really blame people for, you know, having a misunderstanding various different things about the research, because we only ever use that one target, right? On behalf of us semi-basshead audiophiles, what is the general rule of thumb for how far you can boost the sub bass before running into audible distortion? So, it's all going to depend on your listening levels, and is all going to depend on the headphones. So some headphones, like the LCD4, I mean, you know, do what you want. 10 dB, no, whatever, right? But on other headphones, like the Focal headphones, you're going to hit the excursion limit, and you'll clip them if you try and boost the bass too much. And we just ran into that where somebody was running it with a hip DAC, a Focal Clear with a hip DAC, and was talking about, no, it's clipping at normal listening volumes, not realizing that, you know, or I suspect not realizing that like the whole reason for that is, you know, the bass boost on it was incurring the excursion limit, which is at, well, it's between 5 and 10 hertz, which is below the audible threshold. But like if you're boosting that range by 10 dB, suddenly your volume threshold for clipping is way lower. So, you know, then that makes sense that, you know, you'd probably, maybe you'd hit it, right? It'd still be loud, but yeah, there's a chance you could hit it if you were boosting that by 10 dB. So the answer to that is all down to the headphones that you're talking about. But if you do want to do the crazy bass adjustments, I would recommend going with a planar that has, or like an E-stat or something that has, you know, really low, really low harmonic distortion, and isn't going to have any of those driver excursion limit issues. But at the same time, this is the thing that I don't quite understand about, like, okay, so you just described the semi-bass head audiophiles. Is what you're looking for lots of bass, or is what you're looking for good bass? Because you can have lots of bass and it can make the bass sound really bad. Like if the bass is like if it's like 150 hertz, right, and that's where there's a massive boost, that, at least in my opinion, isn't going to sound as good as if the bass shelf is distinct and below 100 hertz. You know, I'd much rather have thump than boom, if that makes sense. And then I'd also much rather have the kind of like impactful punchiness of this kind of headphone over what you get with like the Aeon X closed, even though the Aeon X closed is higher level. So I'd like to think maybe I'm wrong about this, but like the crossover for bass head and audiophile aims at good lots, but also critically good bass. And I don't think that's as simple as just saying, yeah, just EQ it all up to plus 10 dB. All right, getting back to some of the super chats here. What is Saber glare? For my phone's dongle DACs and now FIO M17. I've only ever heard Saber chips. Have I been hearing it for years without noticing it? Thanks, love your show. Thank you. So, from my experience, there was an issue with intermodulation distortion on some of the implementations of earlier ESS chips. I don't know. I don't think we can definitively, you know, correlate that with Saber glare, because there's all kinds of other potential framing effects that could have influenced that narrative. But ever since with the ES9038 Q2Ms and ES9038 Pro chips that get implemented in things these days where there isn't any intermodulation distortion, or nothing that shows up recognizably as that. Or they call them IMD bumps, right? Stuff like that. You know, I suspect that's not something you really need to worry about. I suspect. I hope that answers the question. Honestly, I really wouldn't worry about it, because the other thing with Saber Glare is, this is what I was talking about before, where as soon as you talk about ESS based chips, you know, people have that idea in their heads of, oh yeah, Saber, the ESS based DACs, they're not the velvet sound of the AKMs, therefore they must be harsh and fatiguing, and it influences their assessments. That might not actually be the same results if they were doing blind tests between the two. In fact, I'd wager they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So that's why I think, you know, you probably shouldn't worry about that stuff too much. You should bug Sandcar to make you a full LCD4 with mag chassis with 2021 pads, then review it. maybe then they'll be convinced to offer that as a regular product. Man, I wish. I'd love to. Yeah, I need to talk to Sandcar again about a bunch of stuff. I don't know how they feel about us doing all the, you know, here's an EQ profile. I still need to have a meeting with Karthik to talk a little bit about that as well. I think it's funny because like there's people get all up in arms about, you know, EQ. Why would you EQ this? You know, you're going to destroy the technicalities and all that stuff. Or they didn't like, you know, like a lot of, I didn't mean for this to happen, but like that first EQ profile that I made, just that was based on my initial impressions, got pasted in all kinds of different places online, and then took on a life of its own as like the Resolve EQ. And I'd since refined that EQ to be a lot more careful. And I don't know if that's the one that people are using now. So, you know, and I wish there was a way to sort of put the toothpaste back in the tube on that one. But the fact still remains that like the unit that I had, I probably wouldn't use it without EQ, or I definitely wouldn't use it without EQ. But then I saw Crin's measurement, and it looks much more normal. I say normal. It looks much more balanced for the treble, for the lower treble and mid treble. Then I looked at Oratory's measurement, and it looks a lot like the one that it looks identical to the one that I did. So, or almost, right? There's a couple different differences in the treble. I think mine still had less, but that same feature showed up. So maybe this is unit variation as a result of pads and coupling. Maybe like the pads influence the coupling, right? If there's some subtle differences in the pads, you end up with a different coupling. Maybe. And then that's going to totally change the answer to that question of whether or not you should EQ this. So what I ideally want to do with the LCD5 is get another unit in. I also need to get one with that has the wider headband. I want to get another unit in, and I want to make another video on that, and just to see if there is a difference, or what that is, obviously. But then also kind of have another opportunity to kind of reset that idea about EQ with the LCD5 to a more modest EQ, if that makes sense. Because the original one that I had was way too fun. Hey, Michael, thank you, sir. Thanks for taking the time to hang out. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate you as well. And as usual, guys, shout out to Michael and his channel. And if you want more reviews, I always recommend don't just take one reviewer's word as gospel, whether it's mine or just one channel as gospel. Like, go check out other channels, see what other people are saying about various different things. And Michael is one of the ones that you should definitely check out. Michael DeLazar is the channel. I think it's a bad implementation of Saber chips way back, sounding harsh. Yeah, and then it sort of set a narrative. That seems right. Resolve burger ranking list when. It's funny because like I saw Crin's thing there, and when he was doing the A&W burger, matzo burger, that's actually one of my favorite burgers here in Canada. but the composition is very different. Like it does, like very, very different. I was like, what is that? So, but yeah, maybe I should do that one day. We'll do a couple more here. I haven't tried the Mojo 2 yet. Oh wait, do you own a Rode Metal? The headphone? Because yeah, we ordered it. Are there any open baffle headphones like a Maggie or spatial audio speaker? Oh, Magnepan. Is that what you mean? Perhaps RAL SR1A. I don't have any experience with Magnepans, unfortunately, or spatial audio speaker. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. You know, it's funny though. Like the RAL thing, right, is very, very detailed. I did not find it to have as spacious of a presentation as I think most other people did. I think the reason for that is because it's very forward in that range where, you know, this Sennheiser HG100S is dipped in the mids there. The RAL is very forward there, and obviously you can change that with the flaps and everything, but like on most measurements that area was pretty forward for me. So I get the sense that like a lot of those that commentary on Soundstage with that one is specifically because of the psychoacoustic effect of it being totally open, kind of like how you'd hear speakers. So there's a more similar element of speakers, and that sort of effect can influence people to say, or like to have that experience of a more spacious and open sound. Which is, this is to say that it doesn't mean that you're not having that experience, right? Like you are having that experience if you are, right? Like it's, yeah, just because there are psychoacoustic effects going on, which everybody is kind of influenced by in ways that we don't realize. It doesn't mean that we're somehow that our experiences are false experiences. All black t-shirt, thump is better than boom. Yeah, I definitely need that. I've been thinking about like getting, I mean, I've wanted us to do merch for a while, but I've been thinking about getting like an all black t-shirt with just like dead inside across the front of it. It'd be great. Canadian province ranking list. Yes, Canadian province tier list. That's what we need to do. So at the bottom is absolutely Alberta. There's nothing else that is, just kidding. I have to say that because I'm in BC. I'd probably say, it's funny because, ironically, Quebec would probably be pretty high on that list, for me at least. Yeah, BC, Quebec. I haven't spent any time in Manitoba. Ontario would be pretty high on that list too. As much as I am not a fan of Toronto, Ontario would probably be high because I really like Ottawa. It's a nice city. And some of the maritime provinces would probably be pretty high as well. Just because they have a kind of a unique culture out there. It'd be interesting to go visit. Alberta's number one for you. Canmore equals Canadian Telluride. I don't know what Telluride is. No, there's actually really beautiful areas in Alberta. Like Kananaskis is one of my favorite places. So I'm most, like, if we're talking about like what's the most geographically interesting, Alberta is hot. There are places in Alberta that put it high. I mean, there's also places in Alberta that are kind of shitty, but Yeah, Alberta is a beautiful province. Let's see. I treat IMD hump equals Saber glare as another of Amir's false narratives. Shouldn't the different DAC sound lie mostly on the OEM / custom reconstruction filter that the engineers used? It could be. So that's why I'm hesitant to say that it's because of the IMD hump that equals Saber glare, and there could be other reasons why that narrative has taken off. Yeah, that's totally possible, right? I'm just pointing to that as like where that discussion led, because as much as yes, he does have false narratives, of course I'm going to say that. That it's he's also said other things that are true, right? So, you know, and using data is a good thing, so I commend him for that. No, so just because some things are false narratives doesn't mean that all things are false narratives, if that makes sense. And the same is true for like anybody doing this kind of stuff, right? Like you can, like I know people who, okay, I don't want to say who, but I know people who like have gone down a particular rabbit hole on a particular subject, and now that they think that that's all that we need to pay attention to and all we need to worry about. I'm like, but you don't. We have not gotten there yet. Cannot conclusively say this. But it's like you know, once you have something that you find is unique, and I get it. It's like you want to explore that. I do the same thing. So I guess I'm no better. Maple syrup ranking list when? Stop deleting your own messages. If there's spicy takes, I want to read them. Or spicy questions. Yeah, maple syrup ranking list. Probably never. The road is the question of the day. Yeah, I know. Next week, guys, I'll post the measurements of the road up on the Headphone community forum. There's a thread there already, and I'll post the measurements there. Dynamic driver has more perceivable bass compared to BA having even higher level of bass shelf on FR graph. Am I not alone? No. That's the most common experience of that. Yeah, which is also one of the other things that points to you know there's more there that we need to figure out. For a Sindara, would going from a dongle like the Qdelix to a desktop stack like an Atom stack be much of an upgrade? It would be an upgrade. Much of one? It would be an upgrade. But I mean, like, it depends what you're looking for. Looking to do with it. Because, like, yeah, there's, like, you might not be getting, you know, the amount of volume that you might want or something like that. And also, I'm not sure, like, I didn't try the Sundara from the balanced output of the Qdelix 5K, so I don't actually know about if it's got enough power there. I'm not sure about that, because those don't have much power, those dongle DACs for the single-ended outs. The only one that does is like the what is it? The freaking iFi one, Go Blue. That's the only one that actually has lots of or some power. But yeah, I think there would be an upgrade there. Why do you use an Alere with Utopia pads for streaming? I don't just use it for streaming. I use it. Oh, why do I also use it for streaming? So this is just what I happen to be wearing. This is like there's a series of headphones on this table here. There's an Anando over there that I need to bring back to the studio. There's an LC-XC. There's the Aeon Noir. There's a Sindar without pads. Then there's a Celesti over there. And then there's these, and these are on the desk because I use them more than anything else. Rabbit hole ranking list. Yes. What is the best single dynamic driver IEM you've tested? Probably between the Zen Pro and the Illumination. But I haven't tried the IE600. Is that single dynamic driver? I think it is. I could be wrong about that. How's the Alir? Yeah, I love this combination, but specifically with this amplifier, as I mentioned, out of a 32 ohm out. I'll do a video on this at some point because, yeah. And these are Utopia pads. And like, if I didn't have this, if I wasn't using enough of this amplifier here, I probably would not be, using this as much, right? It still sounds fine without this amplifier, but like that specific combination is fantastic, okay? And it's not cheap, all right? So, don't just think I'm going Alir with, Utopia pads and running it off of, solid state here. It is with that tube amplifier that has a 32 ohm out, so I'm actually boosting the bass, down tilting the whole thing, right? And it is absolutely guilty pleasure. Such a shame that the Focals clip. Check out that some of the posts that I made, because I actually got to the bottom of where they clip, right? So they clip at SPL calibrated at 1K. They clip at between 107 dB and 110 dB. In the bass, obviously, that's a little less, but it's not that much less. So if you are EQing the shit out of them, yeah, you could clip them at volumes that are reasonable to listen to, right? Like, but even I used a plus 10 dB bass boost with the Hip DAC X bass function. Even then, in order, like, I would never be able to encourage them to clip at without serious pain. So no, the focal clipping thing under normal conditions is not something anybody needs to ever worry about. Under certain conditions like massive bass boost EQs, then yeah, like that's not a good choice of headphone. Like if you're using a 10 dB bass shelf at 20 hertz, yeah, that's you probably want to go with something else. But just on that note, though, there is an interesting. I've seen this kind of crop up once in a while. When people say, "Oh, it's too bad that the focals clip." The thing is that's just hitting the driver excursion limit, right? With other headphones that don't clip at those same volumes, you still wouldn't want to push them that high, right? Like, it's just that you get an indicator, like there's a thing that happens, right? That's noticeable, really, really obviously noticeable with the focals. And if it didn't happen, nobody would be talking about it. The other thing I wanted to mention with that is that there are certain synergies with amplifiers that have high output impedances that are going to massively boost the bass, because that's sort of how these headphones work. Like, if you're running them out of, again, I do this to sort of flavor it up with the 32 ohm out, but like there are some amplifiers that have output impedances of like 300, right? If you're doing that, you also reduce the volume threshold for clipping, right? So I think there's all this like squabbling online about, like, some people say, oh, I definitely heard them clipping with my music, and then other people say, that you're damaging your hearing if you're causing them to clip. Both of those things can be true for very reasonable reasons, right? Like, there's a very reasonable explanation for why person A is hearing clipping with them, and person B doesn't and can't push it past the point of pain to get it to do it. So and person A isn't necessarily damaging their hearing, right? It's just a matter of the source that they're running it off of and what's happening with the frequency response in the bass. That's all it is. Or something is defective, right? Let me just get back to two more questions, guys. Two more topics. Okay. That's what I learned also, and Amir just used that narrative to shill topping that used ESS chips and had no IMD hub. Maybe. I don't know. I those aren't things that I really care that much about, honestly, because the ESS implementations that I've heard recently haven't had any issues that I've heard subjectively. And there were older ones that I heard that were a bit more grating, right? I just know that that's where that discussion went. Do you notice any sound degradation from the Calidus Bluetooth connection versus like a hardware option? Yeah, maybe. I was mainly comparing it to other DAC amp dongle, Bluetooth dongle things, right? But again, it probably is more dependent on the headphones. I would never really use those for over-ear headphones that required a lot of power in the first place. So in that sense, yeah, there probably is a difference. But if you're talking about specifically just the Bluetooth, like the fact that it's wireless and the fact that it's Bluetooth, if there is a difference, it's not a huge one. It probably, I mean, I know there are differences in codecs, right? That does create a limit, but like, or it does create an issue. But with some of the like, I think what is it like, LDAC and better, let's say, the differences are not massive. Enough where, you know, a blind test would be probably needed to make that assessment. Do you think manufacturers should be required to list recommended power required? So that sort of opens the door to a different question. So I mean, yeah, like, okay, it would be great if manufacturers on a spec sheet would list, you know, something like that, or give a more clear indication of what, not just necessarily power required, but like a more clear indication of, you know, the things to look for in amplifiers that are going to be ideal, right? But beyond that, for anybody who knows about headphones, like anybody who's been in this hobby, most of you guys, I imagine, if you look at a headphones spec sheet anywhere, it's almost entirely useless. Like, it is just like, I could put, you know, I don't know, I could wax poetic about, you know, sound quality in the most subjective audiophile nonsense bullshit terms, and it would be much more meaningful than anything in the spec sheet for headphones, other than impedance and sensitivity, and certain other things like, you know, the connectors and whatever else. But like, it does, like, when a spec sheet says, you know, 10 kilohertz or 10 hertz to you know, 40 kilohertz, what the hell does that mean? That's useless. It doesn't tell you really anything about how that sounds. So I think that, you know, and the same thing with the THD numbers, right? So I think as an industry, that's an area where we should do better, right? Like, we should be aspiring to do better there and provide more tangible and useful information to people on spec sheets. You know, which is why I really commend the manufacturers who provide frequency response graphs, which is cool to see that Audeze is doing it now. Not on, I don't know if it's like in the box, but like, I think there's, you know, people ask about them and they supply them. Now, it would be great if they showed the results on a comparable, you know, Kemar or like anthropometric pinna with, like, you know, KBX 5000s, and not, I think they still use the 0065. I could be wrong with that. But it'd be great if they could, you know, show something that was, or maybe they still use the KU 1000 or whatever that is. I can't remember. Maybe Metal knows more about that. Here's a fun question. Do you prefer the Hifiman V2 or V3? Which Hifiman? Let's keep going here. What amplifier are you referring to? That's the Amps and Sound Kenzie. But it's the one with the 32 and 300 outs. I don't think the 300 is that useful, to be honest. I would go with... I mean, the safer option would be 8 and 100, but I like the 32 ohm specifically with this headphone because it's an 80 ohm headphone, and that synergy works really well. The way that these change depending on output impedance. Yeah, if you use any focal headphone on a normal source, like a solid state source that has low output impedance, like the most common sources, I would say the vast majority of sources, you'll like, in order to incur the clipping, you would damage your ears like severely within a matter of hours. Like it'd be very fast, but maybe even less than that, right? Like 110 dB is very, very loud. Like, and you will be in excruciating pain before you clip the headphones. But you know, if they're working, unless there's like some issue, you know, if they're damaged or whatever, right? But you know, under unique conditions like X bass functions or output impedance synergies that have high output impedance, you know, that threshold is way lower. So I'll do a video on that because I tested 3 focal headphones so far. So I tested a Lear, Clear, and Utopia. The Lear and the Clear clipped at 106 to 107 dB at 1K, and the Utopia clipped at 110. Now so I need to do still the closebacks, but the fun thing about that is that at 20 hertz, so the clipping threshold is different at 10 hertz than it is at 20 hertz, right? It's actually most significant at 5 to 6 hertz. Now, obviously, that's way below human hearing, right? Human hearing is 20 to 20K in the best cases. But I was able to, like, I was playing basically test tones below 10 hertz because I knew that the excursion limit gets hit faster, or it gets hit earlier the lower you go, typically. Obviously, at the very lowest end, right? Like, it's not even really doing anything. But like, you know, if it's moving, the largest movements, let's say, are going to hit the limit first, and so those are going to be lower. And so when I hit the clipping threshold at 10 hertz, and then went up to 20 hertz, or it was around 20, I think it was like 23, it was completely gone. So even that is like a thing that, like, okay, if you're playing test tones at 10 hertz, there's a chance that you could hit that clipping threshold, you know, lower than if you were, you know, playing music, right? So that's the thing, is like, very obviously with test tones, you know, your clipping threshold is obviously past the point of, you know, pain and damaging your hearing, but even that isn't with music, right? Even that is just with test tones. So yeah, no, there's, under normal conditions, there's no reason to ever be worried about that. Do you believe in hardware burn-in? No. Oh, you're using that. See, I was using the SA6 on the Calidus 5K, but I guess I could use it on anything. I don't EQ that at all. There's a lot of stuff where I know I EQ a lot of stuff, but I prefer the stuff that I don't EQ. So like this headphone, I don't EQ it with that amplifier. It's just because I like the sound, you know. It's not to say it can't be improved. I'm sure there's things that could be improved, but it's not. It's enough of an enjoyable flavor, if that makes sense. And I think that's totally fair, you know. Are you wearing pants? You tell me. Someone's gonna clip that. would it make more sense to drive focals on low gain instead of high gain in amp? It wouldn't matter. Well, low gain versus high gain doesn't matter unless it does change the output impedance, right? And then also, obviously volume, right? But the only time you need to worry about that for the output impedance thing is if you're dealing with amplifiers that have output impedances that are higher than 10. Even then, it's probably not going, like, even then it's still going to be painful and damaging before you hit the clipping threshold. So unless you're in any situation where the bass is being boosted by an excess of 10 dB, or even more, you're not going to hit it. Oh yeah, am I satisfied with the SA6's bass presentation despite using a BA woofer? So it's interesting because so yeah, the SA6 is what I literally have it plugged in right now because I use this a lot. The I know it's BA in here, but these are vented Sonyan woofers, and my first sort of gut reaction that I mentioned to Tom when I first heard this was like, damn, that, like, if you told me this was a hybrid, I would have believed you. Like, yes, it's not the best, right? Like, yes, you can do better. Yes, there are dynamic driver or hybrid implementations that are going to give you a better sense of contrast, but for a BA, it's very good. It's very, very good. Oh yeah, you're in New York, JTB, of course, the Rangers. Yeah, Metal, you and JTB should hang out for sure. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it for this live stream. Thanks to all of you guys for your questions and the spicy takes. Oh, you're talking about the VSG. Sorry, I just saw that comment about the LCD5, the F1000. I have not tried it yet, but I will. I promise I will. The other thing that's weird with the EF1000 is like the volume knob. Like when you turn it down, sometimes it goes up, and when you turn it up, sometimes it goes down. Like there's that weird volume pot thing. I don't think that that's actually uncommon. I think it happens on other amplifiers as well. I just noticed it was interesting. But okay, yeah. Thanks to everybody for joining on the stream as usual. If you guys want more information on this stuff, there's links in the description for the headphone database, which is just on the forum for now. And thanks to Defineers, I think, for putting that together. He did it. I didn't ask him to. And the headphone ranking list is there as well if you're interested in that. We'll have new videos out every week. Next up, I'm not sure what's going to be published next, but I am going to be working on the Rode review soon. Hopefully next week that's out. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. And have a great weekend. Yeah, it definitely needs more Metal 571 on the stream.